Our next guest has been seen reporting from war zones, covering politics in our nation's capital, and anchoring his own show on NewsNation. Now, Leland Vittert is opening up in his new book about something he and his family have kept a secret for decades, his autism diagnosis. And tonight, you can catch a special about him right here on Pix 11. And joining us now to talk about his NewsNation anchoring and is the NewsNation anchor and author of the new book, Born Lucky, Leland Vittert. It's great to see you, sir.
Hey, good to be with you, Marisol. Thank you.
Of course. You diagnosed with autism?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with what we now know to be autism when I was about 5 years old. And then through elementary school, had sort of some different testing. And we wrote this book to give parents hope and to prove to them the agency and the power they have to help their kids. Doesn't matter if it's ADHD or autism or bullying or difficulties growing up. This is for every parent of a kid who's having a hard time. I had a mother who came up to me a couple of days ago after reading the book and said, you know, my son has a nut allergy, and this book proves what I can do to help him. This is the story of my dad adapting me to the world, not the world to me.
I love that. And these pictures, by the way, are just spectacular. So, you know, you said what we now know is autism, because many years ago, who knew from autism? So what were some of those early signs that
it's a great question. Yeah. Back then, right, 1 in 1,500 kids was diagnosed with autism. You really had to be what we would now call profoundly autistic for that diagnosis to happen. When I was about 5 years old, my parents were told that they needed to go get me evaluated. And they take me to one of those medical testing centers, linoleum floors, stale coffee magazines. They're sitting there nervous for a couple of hours. Any parent understands what that's like. The woman brings me back from the testing, and she said it is very difficult to understand what is going on inside his head. So real behavioral issues. If someone would touch me in line at school or at lunch or whatever, I'd turn around and hit them. I had real sensory issues with clothes I wore and whether I could wear socks and all that, classic symptoms of what we now know to be autism. And I had what we would call profound learning disabilities. So IQ test is the average of a score of 2 halves of your IQ test. The standard for a learning disability is a 20-point spread. I had a 70-point spread. So that was what they'd call the largest spread they had ever seen, from mentally retarded in one area and basically genius level in another. So at the time, the woman said to my parents, not much you can do about this. You kind of have to meet him where he is at. And my dad said, is there anything we can do? And we show in Born Lucky what my dad did in sort of this 15-year-long struggle to help adapt me to the world.
Without giving away anything, because we want folks to read this, and I will be among them. At that point in your story, you say your parents never told anyone about your autism diagnosis. Why now? Why is now the time to come out with this information and write a book about it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it goes back to this idea of helping people, right? There's so many families out there who are struggling and feel like they are alone, and Born Lucky is now in its 3rd printing in 1 week. And yes, I'm a television anchor, but I am nowhere near narcissistic enough to think that this is about me. This story is about giving hope to families. And you say, why now? We didn't tell anybody. And Born Lucky has the deepest, darkest parts of my childhood. We tell the story about when I was in 5th grade and my dad came to school to find me put with the girls for weeks in PE because I was so badly bullied. Pulled out of 2 schools between 5th and 7th grade. And I'm now in 7th grade. My parents get called into the principal's office 2 weeks into this new school, hoping that it's a fresh start. They're sitting there in the principal's office. The principal looks at my parents and says, you know, everybody in this school thinks Lucky is really weird. And frankly, I do too. 8th grade, teacher in front of the entire class, art teacher says, you know, Vittert, if my dog was as ugly as you, I would shave its bleep and make it walk backwards. So there's some really tough stuff. And writing this was tough, and going to therapy on national television, as lovely as it is to talk to you in the morning, is not a lot of fun. But if it can help people and if it can prove to families that they're not alone, it's so important. I've gotten 100 emails and social media messages from people who I've never met before who have read this book and said, thank God I'm not alone. And that there is real strength in that.
There truly is, and I think as I'm listening to you, there are lessons for folks and families and communities who are trying to understand or who have loved ones who are on the autism spectrum, but it also sounds like communities writ large on how to invite this, right? This is, which I think is love.
It's a great point. I think if you watch tonight the Bill O'Reilly special, and we really wanted, and I wanted, it was important to me as a journalist to have someone independent help tell this story and really question the story, not just me sort of bloviate about it. But when you read Born Lucky, you find that this applies to every parent who has a kid who's having a hard time. ADHD, anxiety, the difficulties of growing up with bullying, autism. It applies across that very wide group of people who have a kid who's having a hard time. And it's so important to tell parents and show parents the power that they have. The experts don't talk about that. Right now, it's, meet everybody where they're at and celebrate them for who they are. That was not the message from my dad. And it was not this story that I think is really resonating with a lot of people.
And that is a poignant way and a really incredible point. Meet people where they are, and I think that's what builds community. Leland, congratulations on the book. Very courageous thing. And folks at home, you can see the special right here tonight on Pix 11, Born Lucky, with Leland and Bill O'Reilly tonight on Channel 11. Leland, thank you so much for joining us.